Hello, everyone. Wow, I'm feeling all sorts of warm from that jazz selection. Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin, but by the recommendation of Lewis Mitchell, our moderator tonight. Welcome, hello. Welcome to Ingersoll Gender Center's Intergenerational Voices panel, which is part of Ingersoll's Trans Week of Awareness programming. If you could take a moment to edit your name to include your pronouns, that would be great. Tonight, we'll be using the chat function to interact with one another and ask questions of our panelists. If this were a live event, we might snap, clap, cheer, make any number of exclamation points when we agree with something, or if a panelist says something that resonates with our experience. But tonight, we invite you to drop affirmations in the comments and send some energy to the panelists when you feel something they are saying. My name is Kaya. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the development manager at Ingersoll. Ingersoll is a not-for-profit organization by and for trans people that focuses on direct service and community support, advocacy, community events, and has the longest running trans peer support group in the nation. This is our last Trans Week of Awareness event, but we invite you to tune into a Trans Day of Remembrance vigil or gathering tomorrow with our community partners Utopias Seattle and or the Washington Black Trans Task Force. Information about those events can be found on Ingersoll's, Utopia Seattle's, and Washington Black Trans Task Force's social media, as well as our events calendar at www.ingersollgendercenter.org/events. We'll also be dropping some links in the channel. I see some folks. One last note, if you're interested in supporting our ongoing work and programming, you can make a donation at the bit.ly link provided below. I'm going to pass it over to our panelists. I'm very excited about this dialogue. And I will hand it over to my colleague to take it from here, the Reverend Lewis Mitchell.
Greetings, everyone. Good evening. I am speaking to you from Southern California at the moment and enjoying the relative warmth. It is my task to introduce you to the panelists. It is my joy to introduce you to the panelists as well. One of our panelists that had technical difficulties and unable to join us, we will thank them. Stormy Weber, thank you for making the attempt. We wish that you could join us. You'll be missed. I want to start by introducing Jalen Scott Md. She's the executive director of Lavender Rights Project and the founding member of the Washington Black Trans Task Force. Jaelynn has worked as a director of HR, operations, and education for nonprofits and religious organizations. She's an ordained minister and regularly preaches and facilitates workshops on justice and mindfulness. Jaelynn is passionate about trans liberation, sacred practices for self-care, decolonized labor practices, and mindfulness in the workplace. Welcome to you, Jaelynn.
Thank you. I don't know who wrote that, but thank you.
I know it got me excited. Our next panelist is Valentino Reyes. Valentino is a 20-year-old non-binary Latinx lesbian who is a member of the Youth Advisory Council at Gay City, Seattle's LGBTQ Center. They are currently studying psychology at the University of Washington and hope to be a counselor for the LGBTQ youth one day. Welcome, Valentino. Next up is Randy Ford. Randy is a Seattle-born dancer, choreographer, actor, curator, director, and activist. She created and co-produced her first full-length evening show, Queen Street, at Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute with CD Forum in September of 2019. She is one half of the dance duo Dandy with David Rue and is also a member of the AU Collective, an organization dedicated to centering women, queer folks, and people of color and all the work that they do. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you.
And next is Montserrat Padilla. Hey. She has been organizing LGBTQ immigrant and communities of color on the ground for 10 years to build collective movement power. She is currently The Monserrat, wait a minute, that's a mistake right there. Let me hold me back up. She was born in Tonala. Oh my gosh, Tonala, Jalisco, Mexico. And at the age of 2, she migrated to the US with her mother and 2 older siblings. She grew up in East Los Angeles, California, right down the road from where I am right now. And she became part of the 11 million undocumented families living in the US. Welcome to all of the panelists. I am so excited about this opportunity to speak with you and to hear from you. So I'm going to jump right into the first question. And I'm going to invite you to answer it in opposite order of introduction. Got that? Opposite order of introduction. What was the world like when you realized that you were gender diverse? And is this world different? Is that world different from the one that you moved through today? We're going to start with you, Montserrat.
Great. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you and this amazing group of panelists who will rock your worlds, share a little bit about who they are and the amazingness of work that they're doing to, make this world a better place for all of us to be able to live and move forward. And so a little bit about myself. I am undocumented and unafraid, transgender and unashamed and unapologetic. And it's great that you're actually, Louis, that you're down in West Covina, that you're down in California, growing up, being undocumented. I share my story of having to come out of the shadows and closets in three different occasions. One as undocumented, at some point as a queer identified person, and then living in my most fabulous, most authentic version as a trans woman, as a woman with a trans experience. I remember growing up in East Los Angeles, California, when my mother, every morning, my mom would work. She worked at a sweatshop for the first 10 years of her life living in this country. And she would ask me the "where are you from" question. For immigrant families, for immigrant communities, the "where are you from" question goes beyond, I think, for people of color, right? For the "where are you from" question, it's a complicated one that people of color have to endure. And for immigrant folks, it could be a pipeline to the deportation machine if answered wrong to the wrong person. And so every morning my mom would wake up and she'd say, "Where are you from?" And I would say, "Jalisco, Tonalá, Mexico." And she's like, "No, mija, you have to say the children's hospitals so that you won't lift up concerns and essentially be on a pipeline for deportation." And this is also the same place where my femininity was something that was a target, something that was viewed and by some chased down and appreciated by others, concern of what it meant for their world and for their lives. And so for me, I grew up being myself always, loving dance, loving community, sharing my truth, and knowing that being under the radar was never an option for me, that being this fabulous could not be hidden. And so today I am working to ensure that undocumented LGBTQ trans folks are in the front lines of this movement that we're working towards to create a better world, and that we're getting the resources, the support, and the visibility that we deserve to shine and to thrive. So it's a little bit about myself.
Awesome. Thank you. Now I have to go back and see what reverse order is because I don't remember. Randy, you're up next to answer that question. Would you like me to repeat the question, or do you remember it?
I remember it, but
Okay,
thank
good.
you. Yes. What was the world like when I was discovering my gender expansiveness? I'm Seattle born, but raised raised in like the greater South King County, Pierce County. I grew up all over the place. My mom, her income always fluctuated. So we were always kind of like either above, on, or below the poverty line growing up. So like housing, schools, everything, I was always just switching environments. And I was always my feminine dolled up self and just all the things. But, in my world, especially growing up in the Church of God in Christ, which is like, the worst of worst denominations, to be very honest with you. Because it's very gendered, men do this, women do this, and there's no in between. There's no in between. You're either straight, gay, or trans, and that was all I had. And so I knew I wasn't, you know, what I was seeing on TV as transgender. I also grew up with Jerry Springer being on, and Maury, and just all of these, you know, you get all of these images about what a trans woman, you know, who a trans woman is and what they're supposed to look like and what their motives are and all this stuff. And I didn't think that any of that was me. And so I was like, well, I must not be trans. I must be just like gay boy who has a lot of flavor. And then come college, you know, when we're paying for more, you know, information and paying for more research and stuff is when I took a psychology of sexuality class. And I was like, really, my brain opened up a little bit, still not thinking I'm concerned at all as far as like gender, my gender. You know, I was in a fraternity, fun fact, as well in college. And so, yeah, like I had my very own lane. And then it wasn't until after I dropped out of college and read a book called Trans Portraits. And it had these letters of all these folks who identified under the umbrella of transgender, fairy, butch dyke, you know, all of these names that they were just naming for themselves, and, you know, pronouns that were beyond he, him, she, her, and all of these other things. And I was like, oh, I said, I can be, there are other things for me. Oh, there's words. And so I identify as a non-binary trans femme. That's the closest kind of thing that I can give to folks who like ask what my gender identity is. I also put goddess in my pronouns because I feel that mythology is definitely connected with gender variant people. You know, we see all of our gender variant gods and goddesses in those histories. And why are they there? They didn't just pop up there. They were there. Those were probably people whose stories are now being told in certain ways, right? And so, yeah, I definitely think that trans people are inherently divine. You know, we are robbed of our spirituality. We are told that we are evil. And my whole goal is to make sure that young people know that you can declare whoever the hell you are the moment you feel it. And the moment you feel it, that's it. And so I love that we're in a world right now where we're seeing more young people step up and just telling us, you know, and older, this is what it is. Get used to it. And I'm here for it. I'm so here for it. So yeah, back in the time, yeah, it was very strict, very rigid. Now it's much more expansive, much more fluid. And I'm loving every, you know, year that we get to see just more folks, you know, living their truth.
Super awesome. Thank you so much. Valentino, you're up.
Hi. So when I started learning about my, my gender diversity, I mean, like growing up, I always felt like there was something that was like a little bit different than me compared to like the other girls in my school, but I didn't have the language for it. And, growing up with Mexican parents, it's very much like you're either a boy or a girl, and you are a girl. And so my mom hated whenever I like tried to even just like step outside, a little outside the gender binary. So I repressed a lot of that for many years. And then I think like in high school, I was finally coming to terms with being a lesbian, which was very difficult for me. But like there was just still something that was just like missing, something that I couldn't quite put words to. Then I learned about what being non-binary was, and I felt like that. I was like, yes, like that's me. I'm non-binary. But in high school, like I was already being bullied for being gay. I didn't want to add, and like, being Mexican, I didn't want to add like another layer to that. I knew that no one was going to respect my pronouns anyways, so why bother? So I still was like very closeted, except to like my very close group of friends, who many of them were also trans, which is very lovely. But now, like, as I've grown and like as my confidence has like increased and have like started to like learn how to not give a fuck. I feel like when you're trans, like there's this beautiful art of learning not to give a fuck about what other people will think of you. And like in college, I really just started not giving a fuck. So I, would stay my I would start like, tell people what my pronouns were. I was going by a new name. And it was just like, I know that not everybody was going to get them, my name or my pronouns, or not everybody would like respect them. But it was just so freeing to like be able to say that. And it's like, you know, like, I don't care what you think about who I am. This is who I am. And, you know, you can accept me, you cannot accept me. I know who I am. So I felt like it's been a very empowering journey for me.
Wow, I am taking in so much from each of you. Jaelynn?
Yeah, it's interesting to me as I listen through experiences, some of the similarities depending on, you know, where we are, but different age ranges that happen too. I think, you know, I resonate just because of identity, probably a lot with Randy's story. And, you know, I grew up really, half of my family was Baptist. The other half were what they just call sanctified. So these were like the old Mississippi folk that decided like they were too radical almost and too conservative, they were too much for the Church of God in Christ, really. But they just, you know, washboards, tambourines in church all day and all night, you know, exorcising of demons, all in plain sight. So, you know, this was part of the experience, and so that defined sort of my worldview in a way. It's curious how even now, you know, in 2020, how much religious experience defines that. So I was in Mississippi. This was late 90s that I realized what was happening, and I was in college at the time. So maybe second or third year, I had always not really understood. I think I settled on, you know, being a gay man at some point, and it was a settling because it never fit. Something didn't feel right about it. And, you know, I even told my parents at some point, well, I'm saying this, but that's not who I am. That doesn't define me really, because it's still not quite right. I don't know. And I had in choir a friend who actually transitioned while in choir, and I watched how their happiness and their mental health just improved radically as they were taking, I think, shots at the time, and having confirmation surgeries, affirmation surgeries, and their joy and their radiance just lifted them up. But at the same time, it resulted in them, you know, losing access to a lot of things, including work, work at school, able to support themselves with tuition, really not being able to sing in the choir because it was so strict in the binary, not being able to do vocal performance as someone with, you know, what they classify as a male voice doing opera performance. And I watched that, and I knew I resonated so much with that story and thought about it and dreamt about it and thought about her and thought about, you know, what her life would be like, and put myself there, you know, to try to think through like what that would actually feel like to me. About the same time, my grandmother, who, you know, I think Black folk who came before me in my generation had a certain ease in the prophetic and an ease in the mysterious, that they would just say stuff just very simply, and yet it was very profound or something you could hardly believe. But she said, "Oh, I had a dream about you, and you were dressed like a woman. Does that have anything to do with who you are?" And I was like, "Ooh." I said, well, I maybe. And she said, "I thought so because I had no other reason you dressed up like," and she said at the time, like a drag queen. I didn't know. And I was like, "How do you know what a drag queen is?" And I was like, "Okay, Jerry Springer." So it was the same thing. But in that same way, I was ashamed because that's the image that she had received of, you know, who I was. And it's interesting, as conservative as she was in her worldview, she never shamed me. And she's really the only one that I had that conversation with. I think I started to transition a bit, and my family was like, "Absolutely not." And so I sort of promised them that I wouldn't do anything to embarrass them. And I waited another 20 years before transitioning. And so the world was different. I did not have people to look up to. There were a couple of people that we knew, but I didn't see that people people can actually thrive. I mean, I wasn't naive about the danger, because all of the trans women in Mississippi we knew of, were doing sex work. They didn't have the comfort of being able to do that at home. They were actually having to be exposed in the street, when some of them did not want to do that, but that was the way they survived. And their lives, and the challenge of their lives was something that I was just terrified to do for my own self. And so that's what I saw. And I didn't see any other direction for myself. We just did not have the images there. So now the world's completely different. There are, even one, I would have taken one Laverne Cox. I would have taken just one image of someone. The person who I was talking about earlier, who was in the choir, was white identified. So that was even a barrier. There's always this things like, is this something that white people do and not really that Black people do? And so, now just the image, just the one image would have helped. Just the book that you found, Randy, that would have changed my world completely. And we did not have that and didn't have access to it. And I would imagine there's some small towns in Mississippi where there's still the case this day.
Whew, that was a lot. That was a lot. I identify with that so much, Jaelynn, because even after I found trans people, there was no such thing as a trans man anywhere.
That's right. That's right. Nope.
I felt like, okay, there are trans women, but okay, that's all there are. So thank you for that. A few of you mentioned what excites you in the current movement in time. Is there anything that concerns you in this current moment in time in terms of our motion and movement as a community? Anyone can answer as you see fit.
What doesn't concern me? Oh,
read, Randy, read.
Just breathe.
Yeah, I was like, read and Randy, get up, cut up.
Yeah, I brought my she/her earrings in case people forgot. Yeah, what's concerning? I think for someone, and I can only imagine, Valentino, what your experience like as far as being non-binary. But I think with the current, it's lovely. It's lovely that we have Laverne. It's lovely that we have Janet. It's lovely that we have Pose. It's lovely that we have all these things, right? My worry is always that we as a people rely solely on representation and rely on and therefore we can't see the things that we're not seeing. What can we have maybe more folks who aren't on hormone replacement therapy given these platforms, who aren't doing these gender affirming surgeries, folks who don't have access to hormones and surgeries does not make them any more or less trans, in the movement. And I always am conscious of how much space I even take up as, yes, I'm a Black trans person, but I'm also able-bodied, skinny, pretty, I've never been called ugly,
Preach.
You know what I mean? And those are real things that get held against, especially Black trans women who don't look feminine enough. And it's really just, it makes me boil as I'm just talking about it. I hope that, we're not falling into this same pattern of, palatability, of, being the good tranny in front of the people, you know what I mean? Dancing, performing, voguing. What if I don't want to vogue? What if I do not have the energy to, perform for you? I always feel like trans people are performing. We are always, our careers are always around performance, around nightlife, around sex work. Where are the teachers at? I was an elementary school teacher while I was simultaneously burlesque dancing. Where the childcare? There's so many people I know who do childcare. There's so many nurses, and doulas. And, I would love to see more of those platforms amplified. And I would just love for us to, not rely again on representation, because the amount of times I've been told that I look like India Moore from Pose, it makes me a little discerning. I love her, but I feel like that's a very anti-Black colorist statement, to be really honest, it makes me so uncomfortable, that exotification that especially Black trans femmes get, and, you know, women of color. And it's really, yeah, sometimes it feels liberating, and sometimes you feel like you're still in this little fishbowl, you know, and they're just dangling things over you, being like, oh, you want this? You want this? Oh, we're not gonna really give it to you, but, you know, we'll give you a shout out. We'll say yes and make you feel pretty, and that's all you need. No, it's like, we want money, you know, we want jobs, we want houses, we want cars. We don't want, you know, makeup all the time. Yes, you know, make us feel great, but like, we want things that, like, you know, right? Like, yeah, give us the Fenty, but we want, like,
yeah, of course.
just a little bit, but like, we want like food, you know, we want respect. You know, my friend Jay Mace III always says it all the time. We want dignity. And it's like, people aren't giving us the full dignity. And so that's always my biggest concern. Yeah.
Awesome. Who's next?
Yeah, I would like to add on to what Randy was saying, which is like so beautifully put, by the way. And you brought up childcare workers. I am actually a trans person who works in childcare. I have for a couple of years now. However, I am deeply closeted in my job. The people I work for do not know that I'm trans, that I go by my dead name. I use she, her. And it's because I feel like childcare is just one of those things where I'm like, I know that like most parents are not gonna want to hire a trans nanny or a trans tutor. They want to like expose, quote unquote, their kids to me. And it's hard trying to be a non-binary person, like in like these in work settings, especially. And I feel like it'd be very isolating and very alienating still. And that's definitely one of my concerns. And, you know, also, like Randy said, the respectability politics that have been going on, people trying to distance themselves from like, oh, those trans people. Like, I feel like, especially, I've seen a lot of white trans people try and like distance themselves from like trans people of color, from poor trans people, from sorry, from trans people who maybe are gender nonconforming as well. They're trying to distance themselves because they feel like, well, I'll get cis approval. If like I denounce everyone else in my community, I will get the approval. And that's, which is so funny to me, because cis people, I feel like cis people are, like, I've kind of accepted at this point that cis people will probably never respect me, my identity anyways. And it's so funny to search for cis approval, because it's like, you're never, no matter how hard you try, I don't feel like every single cis person, not every single cis person you're going to run into is going to respect who you are. And instead of trying to like, try and like grasp like their approval, it's so much better, I feel like, to immerse yourself in the community and to get and to help your community and to uplift your community, rather than to like isolate yourself and try and like fit in with cis people. Because at the end of the day, like, I feel like trans people, we have each other, and I feel like that's very important to recognize.
Thank you so much. Jaelynn, Monserrat?
I was thinking about the conversation around representation, and I think representation is really important. And I think that that could also be a sign of, you know, my age. I think, you know, 80s, 90s is all about representational identity, politics stuff, right? But I do think it's important to have those folk there, but the cultural setup, you know, and having people prepared in those positions, in that community, and respected in those communities, and also having diversity of representation, I think is critical. What the personal piece around this, however, is, you know, when you're an object of representation, figuring out, you know, am I here as, you know, it's the same thing with Black people. Am I here just to fill the quota? Am I here and respected because you feel like that I am an acceptable trans person that you can attach yourself to, or to make yourself feel better about, you know, being who you are in this world? Are you funding us because you believe in my mission of the org and our work? Or are you funding us because you are fascinated at the moment with Black trans people? Or, you know, it's hard to have confidence. At some point, you start internalizing. It's hard to have confidence in yourself that you actually are worthy of all of those things, of all of the positions that they have, you know, allowed us to be in, and more. You're worthy of their positions, and your work is good, and you don't need their acknowledgement for it. But it becomes really difficult because the way that we're placed into positions in work, in life, in cis community or in the larger community, is all about, you know, objectification of our body and identity. It's tricky. It's tricky internally to figure out, like, where am I now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I become the caricature of myself almost.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Monserrat?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that what is concerning to this day, and I think Randy hit on it, like right, the hammer and the nail of like, pay us our coins. That's one of them, right? But that's like step 2 before step 1. Step 1 is give us the job. Give us that title of the director of the job. Like, we are enough. We have the skills. We have the knowledge. Stop making us the entry-level positions all the time. We have the power to run these positions, right? All the time. And then when we do get up there, pay us to scale wages. Don't just give us this, like, and make us fight this system to survive when we're already fighting to survive, for our vision to survive, right? Like, I remember when I was starting my transition, I was already in a national coordinating position with United We Dream, one of the first and largest immigrant youth-led networks, entry-level position, of course, but still identified as a queer, young, brown person. And my biggest concern was, you know, I think our trans siblings were portrayed as angry all the time. We're angry because you're not paying us our money. You're not putting us in those positions of power. You're using us. Of course, the hell yes, we're going to be angry. And I'm still angry. And so I think it just adds this burden to us that we're angry. But then when we ask for what we are deserving of, then they call us angry again. And then if we don't say it, then we're not powerful enough. And I think it's just this complex world where what I'm most excited about is that today we do have all these amazing people on this panel, right? Like, there is more of us. There is power in who we are. And today we get to drive forward, like to move forward. And for folks who have kept us back, who have held us back, either they sink or they swim, and they will swim in our direction. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really excited about.
Okay, so there's like so much going on here, and I need to not make this a 3-hour panel, even though I'd like to, because I'd run around and shout, except you'd find out that I have on shorts underneath this cool sweater, so I won't do that to y'all. But I want to ask some specific questions here, and I want to start with some of you. I think Dee Dee Waters coined the phrase Yelder, which is young elders, which means you may be young in age, but long in the work, right? Because just because you old don't mean you done nothing. I'm just saying. So for some of you Yelders here, are there trans elder or mentor figures now or in the past who you think influence who you are today? And I'm not trying to age nobody, but I'm gonna start with.
I can start off. I mean, I'm you know,
Go for it.
I'm and you know, I think when we talk about what was the term that you used?
Yelder.
Yelder, yeah. First thing that we need to realize is that trans people have a shorter lifespan. Why? Because the systemic oppression kills us from the root. Like, they're attacking us
And so when you have a 40-year-old trans person, we consider them trans elders. Why? Because our lifespan is so short, because the system is killing us, right? Because society is killing us. So the fact that we have trans elders is just already something to question, like at what time are we considering a trans elder to be a trans elder? And this is why I'm jumping on into this question, because while I'm still very young in this 3-year journey of my transition, I know that the clock is ticking into what the system has set up for me to live for it. And so I'm gonna fight every single day to the day that I die to fight that system down and to ensure that there is a bigger lifespan so that I don't have to jump to this question right away. The second thing, I am so grateful for my trans elder, my trans mentors, my mothers, the goddesses that taught me how to stand in my own truth and my own 2 feet and with my head high. These are, Ruby Corrado in Washington, D.C., Bambi Saucedo. We have Ana Andrea Molina in Texas, who's an undocumented woman who has a shelter and is giving people. These are the women that gave me courage. We also have Tony Michelle in Georgia, who's fighting, to essentially get folks released from being incarcerated. This society makes us pivot against each other, and I'm gonna say, let's not let them divide us. There's a system that's killing us, and let's fight against that system to the very end. And I'm grateful for all those folks and mentorship that I've had over my years.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Chills. Echoing all that you've said. I've been very blessed to have trans elders here in Seattle with me. The Lady B has been a mentor for me, even though, I still consider her young. She's definitely been a mentor since the first day I met her in the burlesque community and in the activism world. Danny Terrell, who's, someone who's coming into their transness right now newly, is still someone I consider a mentor for me in the dance world and choreography and curating world, and how to make space and, how to be unapologetic and all of, those are my 2 for sure aunties. Jaelynn, who I also have, I've been blessed to work with for a number of years. And I've been able to see you actually transform as well before my eyes. I think we've both seen each other transform in front of each other's eyes. And I think that's just also so beautiful. Like, I feel like Jaelynn's one of my really good friends, as much as I consider you a mentor, and like, I've been really thinking about that, how I have been, being in community with, folks who are older without making them feel old. Cause I know I'm a shady bitch. Like, let's not I'm a shady bitch. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm 27 and I'm just, I'm also kind of like in that mode where like I'm becoming auntie, to a lot of like my students, and that's also, I feel like, a form of eldership, being called an auntie, a second mom, or not really a mom, maybe a temporary part-time mother. I definitely have that nurturing spirit in me. And I have a weak spot I found for the youth. Like, oh my goodness, I used to hate teaching youth, and now like they have me every time they have me. And I think it's so important that, we are just intentional with how we're passing this work along, which is why I think, intergenerational, might be jumping on a question, my bad, but, this is really important. Okay, I'm gonna keep it down, but, it's really important, like how we pay attention to how we're being passed this work. I didn't really have anyone really pass this work to me. I kind of ran to it and was like, give me something to do, and so like, how do we kind of make it an option, but like, hey, this is for you. It doesn't have to be, I also think trans folks, don't have to always be activists and have to always save the community. I think that's also a burden that, oh my God, even I to this day struggle with. And so, really, just thinking about what it is what is it to reclaim our time, as Maxine Waters said it, like, how do we actually actively, radically reclaim that time and intentionally pass on this work so that we're not saying, well, you have to do it because no one else is. I don't think we need any more of those systems that, will do it just because. No, do it because you want to, because we don't want people in here who don't want to be here, honestly. Like, so yeah, I've been blessed to have 2 mentors. Oh, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Big Frida is also just one of my, I hope to meet her so bad, especially as I'm discovering my writing, and I'm just like, oh my God, like just bounce music all the way. So that's it.
I think I'm the oldest one probably in the panel. I'm just going to assume that. And I was trying to wait till the last just to be cute. But I think there is, Montserrat's comments about just our age and the lack of elders and mentors, I think applies to me not having that access. I am learning and have learned so much from the task force specifically. Like they serve as both sisters and elders. They call me, auntie, and, but yet, they might be my nieces. But I'm learning more from them than I have anyone else about what it means to step into my own and be who I am and accept who I am and realize that, there is no presentation that is perfect. It's the one that I show up in, feel comfortable with in that day. I mean, you would understand how much I learned from Randy and her and the way that she moves in the world, like her body itself and the movement and the beauty of the movement and the grace teaches me alone more lessons that I've learned about how to be in the world in this last 43 years. So, there are others. There's, Miss James and Missy T growing up, these older trans women who had struggled really in Mississippi and had really nothing. And really showed the beginnings for me that, I still was thinking about that I need to survive, but eventually getting me to the place 20 something years later to say that, okay, maybe being who I am is more important than a guarantee of survival. And just seeing how brave the young folks are in the task force. And I think most of them are pretty young, most of them. I think that bravery teaches me, it teaches me how to stand into my Blackness and my Black womanhood.
Valentino.
Yeah, so I just want to say, like, everyone here, like, such like beautiful answers. So, so it's very thought-provoking. I'm very blessed to be here with y'all tonight. For me, gosh, when I was in college or in Seattle Central, I went to Gay City like all the time because I was so excited. Because I was so excited, and that's where I met my mentors. They're not actually that much older than me. So I would really say like Lady and Maisha from Gay City are my two mentors. They're both like just so, gosh, like they've really taught me a lot in terms of like just like even just like basic things like writing a resume and like like making sure that you are compensated like for your time because your time and your labor is valuable. Which is I don't think enough of us here in this world. And like they've just been like so kind to me, and have really just kind of shown me like what life can be like for me later down the line. And it doesn't have to end in tragedy, and that I'm sorry. I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but yes, they're both very amazing people, and I love them both very dearly.
There's nothing wrong with being emotional about anything, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm an emotional human being. I celebrate that. I want to thank you all for the words you've lifted up. I just want to take a gratitude break real quick and say thank you. Thank you. And Monserrat, you lifted up all my homegirls. Bambi and I go way back, farther back than I want to admit.
She's trouble. She's trouble.
Well,
and I love it. She's that good type of trouble.
Sometimes you got to be trouble because the opposite of trouble is you know, being so shut down that you can't function. So
Boring.
And that you can't survive, right?
you gotta
We
stir it
can't
up
survive.
just to get through it. I want to try to combine the next two questions a little bit and maybe put a little of a wrinkle on them. So the next question is really about intergenerational dialogue. But I also want to talk about dialogue and mutual respect. I think one of the things that I observe from time to time is both a respect of people because they appear to be older and elders or whatever, but also a dismissal that somehow we don't really know shit because we're too old or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's a way in which there's a tension there. And so I want to ask you about your thoughts on how to engage in intergenerational dialogue, but also how to seed intergenerational respect and openness, like for even differing points of view. And I'm going to give you the example that popped into my mind. I have a friend back east, long time, and not really an activist, but she's a trans woman. And so activism kind of came at her more than she went to it. But she's like very, 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 very like, I don't understand this whole non-binary business and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, you don't need to understand it to respect it though, sis. See, like that stuff you're saying right there, I'm not having that. I can't go with you there. Like, cause really, just because they have new language that makes more sense to them doesn't mean that we don't exist. Like, stop it. You like beating up people that are looking to you for advice, you know, and support. So, I mean, it's that kind of tension I'm talking about. It's not always from the younger to the older, sometimes from the older to the younger, but how do you navigate that? What are your thoughts?
I want to say one thing. I think younger to older, older to younger. We are ever preaching, I think everyone here probably, that we need to center trans voices and Black trans voices and the voices of the most marginalized. And sometimes I think we think about the vulnerability we forget about the vulnerability of youth. And we forget that we can also prioritize and center their voices too. And so, you know, when we're not willing to completely let go and to let go of everything and really lose, you know, at the risk of losing things, giving them an opportunity to actually lead fully, it comes across in a way that is, okay, well, I'm going to push my agenda on you because I'm older and I think I know better. I understand culturally, different cultures, you know, and especially in Black culture, older people have a certain positionality, but that doesn't seem to work in 2020 in the same way. And, you know, when I have found has worked for me when I was young were those folks who let me just get in a lot of damn trouble, but trusted me and believed in me and followed my leadership, even when they knew it was naive, and was there to hold me when I fell apart. And so it never really was a question of me challenging them. And I learned to respect them because of that, right? I learned to be respectful for them just because I saw their willingness to trust me and trust my leadership.
Yes. Oh my God. You also said something earlier, Jaelynn, that just popped into my head that I think a lot of younger folks, you know, need to understand too, from younger to older. And you mentioned that the 80s and the 90s were a period of identity, right? And, you know, I think that's why a lot of this generation's probably, you know, revisiting that time because they felt that liberation from the older folks. They felt that discovery. And now that we're kind of getting it. We're kind of, oh, like this is maybe what that was like, that new age. And so I think like there needs to be a respect for the times that we all come from. You know, I need to be respectful, you know, for someone who grew up in their identity in the 70s, 60s, and 80s. You know, like I need to be mindful that there was a time where any lick of this was literally your life. You know, and like to really think about that and to think about, again, area, you know, being the Pacific Northwest compared to the South. You know, it wasn't all daisies up here, but I am so grateful to have been born in this region and to have grown into myself in this region because I don't think I would have been able to, like point blank, you know? And so I think there needs to, in order for that dialogue to happen, I think there needs to be a respect for, the times in which we've come in, a respect for our modes and different modes of survival. I'm gonna need to be open to the younger generation probably calling me on a lot of things that maybe our generation was complicit in, you know what I mean? And so like, I think there's a little bit of that, being able to, trust, engage in a way that's not combative, like don't listen to respond, listen to really engage and understand. And I always say we need to go younger than what we think we are. I think these conversations can totally be had as someone who taught, for 7 years, K-5 to 18, like these conversations, the young people need to be included. Like, elementary, middle school, they need to be included. There's no reason why they have to wait till they're adults. I think something that, I'm loving is that, I grew up in a time where, a kid should be a kid, don't let I'm like, wait, I was a trans kid at some point. So don't, adulterize my experience just because, you related to sex work and all this stuff, you know what I mean? And I think, like a lot of times there's that, oh, well, you just want to be all that. And it's like, no, like, again, let me experiment, let me fall, let me, wear nothing and then be like, oh, maybe I want to put something on, you know what I mean? Like, let me be that adolescence, let us relive and re-child ourselves, and like, and get that, at any stage, you know what I mean? Like, because we all transition in so many points of our lives, some of us transition when we're younger, some of us transition when we're older, some of us never quite, some of us don't even know that we've been doing it, and we just been living and just been doing our own shit, you know what I mean? Like, so I think, just in order for that real good dialogue, we need to go younger, and we need to really really listen, be told about ourselves, and like really, and take it, like take it.
The floor is open.
Yeah. I was just gonna say from younger to older. Yeah, I definitely also feel that there's like this sometimes like this sort of between like the language that we use and like what older trans people might call themselves or might call other trans people is a lot, or other like gay, lesbian, bi, etc., is a lot different than like what we would call other trans people or what we call ourselves. And I feel like sometimes we get caught in that rift, and I feel like it's important to respect the language that we grow up with. I understand that like an older trans person, for example, might describe themselves differently than what I might be used to hearing from other trans people describe themselves as. And like knowing that like, okay, like, but this is like the language that they grew up with, and just like not getting caught up so much in the language, and like getting and like trying to get more from like what was like their experience as a whole, like growing up, and what can we learn from like trans elders, I think is more important than like trying to get caught in the language.
I think for me, just what comes to my mind is the tremendous sacrifice, work, leadership, wisdom, brilliance that came before us for a new generation to find the courage to speak our truth, and that younger generations can continue, pushing us further to have a bigger, more expansive universe for all of us to live our truth. And I come from a place where, I learned from my mentors what it took for them to have a house, what it took for them to have a 501c3. Some of that meant, things to keep the lights on so that their organization could run. And people just being, trans sisters just being trans people being trans people. I remember seeing in the clubs when I was still not even out as queer, very much in the closet, very much afraid. You know, the glam, the living authentically, the joy, but also the attacks. I vividly remember the attacks and how afraid I was. And I think, you know, growing up in East LA, I am so grateful to also live in the Northwest. I don't think I would have had the courage, the support, the love, location, such an important thing. And that made me feel safe. And so I'm in deep admiration for both, you know, all spectrums of generations, for what has come, what has been built, and the dreams that we can achieve moving forward.
Wow. This is such a powerful panel. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I know I'm taking breaks, but I'm just soaking y'all in.
You good? Like every time Montserrat, like I'm gonna cry every time. I'm just like, oh, yes, please, sister, keep going.
You know, and I want to say, you know, I think I dreamt of the community that exists now, you know, 2 decades ago when I felt like I was the only one on the planet. Like I could not have imagined an organization like Ingersoll or any of the other organizations. I could not have imagined that any of us would be talking to each other, like just like having a conversation. Like that was beyond my imagination. It just, you know, so like I feel like I'm living in a dream world, even with all of its complications. The fact that there is a community or a bunch of communities pretending to be one community, however that works, you know, when you think about it, the Harry Benjamin Standards said that you were not supposed to tell anybody but your doctor. So somebody had to break that rule in order for there to be a community. Like you weren't supposed to tell anybody anything, which is the antithesis of building community. So the fact that there is a community, even at its worst moments, is nothing short of miraculous. And it had to come from rule breakers and rule benders and people who were like, fuck it, I need somebody to talk to. So, I mean, the people that are rule benders and rule breakers are always the ones that are blazing the trail for everybody else. So I want to go, you know, I have a question about allyship, and I want to get to that question. And then I want to ask some question about future thinking. So we have a lot of allies that have been joining us in solidarity this week, and some have asked how they can best lift up trans and gender diverse people. Can you share your insights or personally meaningful experiences of how allies can and have shown up for you in community? Who would like to begin?
Not it.
I love it, Randy's like, I'm out. I can start. I can take it off. That pause was intentional. So I think allyship is vital for the development of resources for our communities, for the development of strength that adds this line of defense where we don't always have to put our own self bodies, you know, because our bodies automatically are the line of defense, but like, let's get some allies to help with that so that we don't have to do it. And I think the labor of having allies comes with direction, right? With having to have an answer for where to position allies. That is the like unexpected labor that comes with allyship, that is bestowed upon the directly impacted person that needs to tell them where to best be positioned, because if not, allyship can become potentially more traumatizing than what it's intended to be. And so I think, you know, for me, I've worked in advocacy specifically. I have worked to advance state policies that does tap into allies. Regarding my immigrant experience, you know, having citizen allies in this particular role is vital because, you know, I might tell the governor we need $40 million to give to undocumented people who were left behind. But if you have that that pink pussy hat Women's March person calling the governor, it gives it a little twist to the governor, and it's unfortunate that we still have to live in this role where our voices still need to be validated by an ally. I hope that the younger generation can dream of a world where that no longer is needed, where we really stand shoulder to shoulder. And I'm hoping that we're able to see that world before I don't ever get to breathe again. And I'm hoping that does get to happen, but there's still a lot of work. And so I do want to recognize the labor that comes with those who are directly impacted to organize allyship. They're amazing. We need them. Please continue donating. Give us the coins, give us the resources, allow us to be able to lead this work, because we are brilliant minds. And I think that you should not feel ashamed to being led by those directly impacted. There is power to knowing that it's okay to help others, right? Like, there is power in solidarity. And so I think, solidarity is key to know how to do that. And I think one of the things that the last thing I would share is this famous quote that I start all my organizing with. It's from Lila Watson that says, "If you have come here to help me, then you're wasting your time. But if you're here because your liberation is intertwined with mine, then let us work together."
Yeah, I think that, beautifully put. I also just want to say, like Montserrat said, open your purse. If you are in the financial position to donate money to trans people, especially Black trans people, especially Black trans women, please do so. I see all the time on my Twitter feed, on Instagram, all of these trans people who are in desperate need of money for rent, for food. And so I think it's so important to give if you can. And I genuinely believe that's one of the most important things you can do to be an ally. If you are financially able to support trans people. I understand that not everybody is financially able to, we all got care bills. So if you are unable to financially, then I think the next best thing, it's also important, but to just listen to trans people, listen to the most marginalized voices in our community, right? Not just the respectable trans people that you deem are respectable enough to listen to, and advocate for us when in lawmaking, in the sorry, words jumbled. But advocate for us if you can, if there is, there are laws trying to be passed, if during a protest, if so, and if you can do something for your trans friends or the trans people in your life to make them feel a little more safe, if you can walk home with them at night, if you can provide them with something that they might not be able to find themselves, just being able, even let's say cooking them a meal, just doing these little small things can really mean a lot as well.
That's so well said, Valentino. I think that requires them to think about us, and not think about us just this week, and not think about us just post George Floyd, but to prioritize us in their lives. It's a change. We're asking a whole lot of people, not just to think about us occasionally, but when you read a law that you're passing or that you're writing, it's your instinct, because you have put us front and center in your heart, to say, oh shit, they're not in here. We shouldn't have to come and tell you that, right? We shouldn't have to. Or when there is you know, we're in the middle of COVID or we're in the middle of a contentious election, like it's just instinct. Like Valentino said, to call and say, are you okay going to the grocery store right now? You know, like but that takes for, they have to think about us. And more than just to make themselves feel good occasionally.
Yes, all of that. All of that. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning rides home. You know, rides home, lifts. Why are we taking public transportation when it's getting dark at 4 o'clock? You know, like you wouldn't be walking around yourself late at night, you know, like why would you let me? Yeah, I've been thankful to have a car and just like, you know, offer to pay someone's bills. Like offer to pay someone's rent, you know, like so many folks need rent assistance, you know, who are, you know, couch surfing or, you know, just squatting, you know, like finding ways to just live and stay warm, you know, like I also just, I really want to, yes, donate your car. I've had friends give me their car for days when they travel out of town. I'm just like, whoa. And it feels just like, oh my God, like you, like I used to be the bag lady, y'all, like commuting from Tacoma to Seattle every day with bags on my back, you know, because I had to, you know, like there are things, we go to lengths, okay, to survive. We go to lengths to survive, you know. Yeah, asking us if we ate, asking us if we drank water, asking us, yeah, you know, hey, was that encounter, even though you're kind of laughing it off, was that okay? Let me know. You know what I mean? Like, what are our cues? Read the room, you know? Like, I need people to read the room. I need people to also, when you do offer up, you know, your services or you volunteer, don't expect anything in return. Like, don't even expect a thank you. You know what I mean? Because you should be doing it. I also want to see more people like sacrifice things, you know, and like really like sacrifice, you know, and I'm going to be real blunt. Like I need people to die for Black trans people, you know, like I need people to be like, if you're going to offer something, offer your life because mine is at jeopardy every day. You know, there are some who are at jeopardy even more than me. You know, don't only support folks you think are attractive, that you think are, you know, that you want to sleep with. Don't only support girls you think are pretty. Don't only support people who are on hormones. Don't only support performers. Support the children, you know. There's so many things, you know, and don't expect us to be the saviors of all of this. We're not the cause. You know, so when you say, how do we help? How do we help? You know how to help. You know what you need to give up. It's okay. It's going to suck. But you know, everyone knows. Everyone knows. You know, we are all very much capable of being that self-aware and you being like, you know what am I doing to step on people's necks? You know what I mean? Like, ooh, you know, maybe I should switch it up, you know, and it's not going to be perfect. You know, I think it's a hard, you know, you're going to get used to, yeah, some moody trans people, you know what I mean? Stop only talking to people you think are nice, you know, or listening to people you only think are nice, that say things in a way that you can hear. Like that is very anti-Black, that's very transphobic, that's very ableist, elitist, classist, imperialist, you know, like we as Americans, you know, I think we really need to think about, like, expand our global idea around, you know, what the trans experience is. I think Black people need to also expand our idea of what Blackness is, you know, globally, and just think about really just all of the ways in which our energy affects others. You know, like what paper trail are you leaving behind? You know, what are your after effects? Are you disrupting everything or are you leaving it better than you found it? I just discovered that quote and I was like, oh my God, yes. And it's all nature, you know. I feel like we all need to return to the spirit in some way. So yeah, the more you can just tune into yourself, the more you can liberate Black trans people and trans people in general. The more you can check yourself and just be like, yo, is this something that I'm putting onto these folks because of my own insecurities, because I don't think I can indulge, because I was told no, check yourself before you come for me. Like, just literally, that's it. And write the check is what the Lady B would always say. Cut the check.
Thank you for that. You know, I want to offer people who are not creative, get creative. You know, maybe give up that Airbnb you're making money on so somebody can have an apartment. You know, you can pay someone's rent. You can also actually rent your place to them so they don't have to couch surf. You know, if you have a job, maybe you ought to send those openings and stand in your boss's office and say, this person needs a job. I'm vouching for them, if that's what they want to do. We get so creative when it's us, but we lose all creativity when we're in the ally position. Anyway, I will stop there. But
keep going. Come on.
no, time. I'm trying to be a good steward of time, mine and yours.
What is time?
You know, I think there are ways in which allyship intra-community can also be a thing. And so while we're looking at external allies, I also want to remind us what it means to be internal allies. Like sometimes for me, that means like, I don't see any I don't see any trans women or trans femmes or non-binary people on this panel. I'm not doing it till you fill these slots. I'll sit down. You got 6 trans men. How many perspectives you need? Really, can we just get some other people in here? So sometimes it means upsetting, you know, especially when you're the one that's invited to everything, then you hold a little bit of sway and say, no, listen, I'm gonna step back. Let me give you these names right here. These are voices you've never heard before. You need to hear from them. It is what it is. Anyway, I want to get to the final question. The question says, tell us about the trans future and utopia that you dream of, AKA, what does liberation mean to you and what might that look like in the world? Now that's a huge bit of a question. So I'm really looking forward to what you offer. Whoever would like to go first.
I'm just still laughing at that last comment, Randy. Quit your jobs and give them to us. Solidarity. Like
I want the t-shirts.
I want that t-shirt. Yes. What does liberation look like? I'll tell you where, I guess in turn for me, what does my liberation look like? It means being able to purchase a home, being able to travel to Mexico and see my mother, who I haven't seen for 15 years because of this immigration border that separates us. One day be able to plan a family and not, you know. And liberation for me looks like, as activist as I'm out there, I don't want to be out here fighting for my life. I wish I was sitting at a farmer's market thinking of what fucking tea to purchase. That's all I want in life. Maybe a nice movie on Sunday night. You know, that's what I want. That's my liberation. It's, you know, people will call it basic, but I think that's just so much. It's life. I want life. That's my liberation. That's what I need.
That was rich. Absolutely. I also, my dream for the future is that T-Door is a day where we remember where we lived old, long lives and not cut short lives. I want holidays that are beyond just what we look like, but just what we do. What are we doing? You know, how are we doing it? I also want that house. I want that house. I want to sit in the sun. I want to be basic. I want the option to be basic. You know, I want the option to want to have to work so much and not feel forced to have to work so much. Yeah, I want that ease. Absolutely. I want life. Aisha is my other name and it means life. You know, I want to live. You know, I want to give life. You know, I want to cultivate. I want to do all the things. I want to manifest. I want to do all the things I can possibly do with my life. And I want to do it all. Yeah, so the future looks like, you know, us all making bucket lists and completing them, you know, and just, yeah. Also, maybe even our own little island. Yeah, I also see an island, you know, because I'm definitely.
Can I put that also on the bucket list? Yes.
Yes.
An island for us.
We're going to make the Amazon a real thing.
I am inspired to hear. When I first saw this question, I had it, I think yesterday or day before yesterday in a panel, and was kind of angry at getting the question because and my response was, honestly, I don't really have an answer for this because I've been, we've been stuck in survival. So it's hard to think past tomorrow. Like, I'm not allowed to have an eschatology. I'm not allowed to have a what happens in the end and afterwards. I'm not allowed to think that far out. But I thought about it a lot and some more. And I think today, in this space, it feels a little more hopeful. And I'm listening to y'all and I'm just like, it lifts my spirits that we can dream. And I think my dream is to step into my inheritance, my spiritual inheritance, and to be able to do it without having to worry about survival, without having to worry about activism, just to be able to step into my spiritual inheritance and be it and be able to survive through it, to thrive through it, and to lead with it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Lewis, go ahead.
No.
Okay. Very beautiful. That was very beautiful. Transliberation for me, I think it looks like liber. It's so I have to think about. I think just like our dignity, people like actually like respecting trans people, I think would be amazing. I think transliberation is like making sure everyone who wants a home has a home. Trans people are safe. Trans people are loved. Trans people are cherished. And I also think it's, not having to worry about, for many trans people, like during trans people struggle financially. I hope none of us have to deal with that ever in the future. I also think it's liberation from capitalism, but that's a bit much for some people. I go back and forth between thinking about what the future is like for trans people, because I feel like it changes like minute to minute. But most of all, I think I want all trans people, like I said, to be loved, to be safe, and to be cherished by others.
Yeah. In some ways, I'm looking at the future that I dreamt of right now in each of you. I think there's a limitation to how much I can dream. I feel a little bit of stuck and like I'm so used to being in the struggle that like the idea of freedom seems like it's for the next generation and not for me. But the one thing I'll lift up is when I talked to my 8-year-old, I told my 8-year-old her dad's backstory this year. I said, hey, your daddy was born a little girl. Here's a picture. And we talked about it. And I said, so do you think that's like really weird or really cool? And she's like, no, I think that's really cool. Does that mean you used to be a lesbian too? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, oh, I love lesbians. I'm like, okay. So, like that conversation with my 8-year-old, that's what the undreamable looks like to me. Like that could be just like a casual conversation. Like, we had a whole conversation. Like some people are born with these parts. Some people are born with these parts. Some people have a blend of them. Some people become this. Some people become that. Some people change up. And she was like, yeah, can we watch a movie? And it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't very deep at all. Like, like that's my dream, that it becomes so matter of fact and so commonplace that it doesn't even deserve if you want to do it theatrically, you can, but your life doesn't become theater for somebody or fodder for somebody because of who you are. That's my dream. And so part of that is coming true in the life of my 8-year-old and in your lives. And I'm grateful to be here for it. I am going to turn it back. Let me look at the time. Oh, I am almost on time. Check me out. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Kaya, to close us out. Thank you all. You have been an amazing panel. You give me so much hope. I thank you, each and every one of you.
Yeah, and Kaya stepped into the Facebook Live to hang out and comment. So I'll close this out. That's the end of our program tonight. I just want to give a huge thanks to our panelists who were able to share their knowledge, their future vision, everything. I'm low-key in my dining room crying a little bit, which is pretty cute, and a feeling that I've been feeling a lot this week. So thank you, Valentino, Jaelynn, Randy, and Montserrat. And we really appreciate the work that you do for our community and that you were able to join us tonight, because I know this week is unfortunately a lot for a lot of us, but also beautifully a lot for a lot of us. So yeah, thanks, y'all.